Hello, and welcome to episode 87 of Design Curious Podcast. I'm your host and mentor, Rebecca Ward. Today on the podcast, I'm talking to you about project binders that live on the site once you're in project management phase. There's a lot that goes into it, and it's worth its while because it's definitely going to help your project run more smoothly. We actually do two big binders like this for the project. One is for the site binder when we're in the construction phase, but then the other one is a version of this that goes to the client at the very end of the project. It's a summary of all the things that we've done. It has a lot of similar things in it, but today I'm just talking about the site binder. Before I get to that, I want to remind you of all the links for downloads, the things I wish I'd known before I started my career in interior design. Those can be found in the show notes, as well as information about my design mentor, which is my mentoring platform that you can work with me online to help get your career started the right way. So check that out if that's something that interests you. I'd love to have you in there. And now let's talk a little bit more about your site binder. You're now listening to Design Curious, a place where you, creative one, are here to learn about what it really is like to be an interior designer. And I'm your host and mentor, Rebecca Ward. If you're worried about how to succeed in a creative career, if you're ready to learn your next steps to become an interior designer, and if you want the satisfaction of doing something you love every day, you are in the right place. Grab a coffee, a notebook, and let's dig into today's episode. So our project binders, the ones that we take onto site, are always a work in progress. I feel we're always trying to perfect them. We always find something that we're like, oh yes, next time we need to include this, or we need to print this out and take it to the site to include in the binder. I'll kind of walk through to give you an example of how you might want to set up your project site binder as you're starting out in your career and in your business. Some great details for you as a template. So the project site binder purpose is to make the aspects of the project accessible to any trades that may be on site throughout the project. This is a binder that we create. It's physical. It's usually a 2-inch 3-ring binder. It's one of those white ones that has clear plastic on the front, so we can put a cover page on there. We have outlines. We have tabs on the inside. And we have a note on the front of this binder that says it should not be removed from the job site. And it has the contact information of us, the designer, has the general contractor, for anyone else who's on site who might need to get in touch with them. And this binder, like I said, it lives on the site. Once we're in construction, I will put it usually like in a closet or some safe place so that every time I'm making a site visit, I will grab it and take notes in it or reference it. Most of the time they're asking me a question. And we've had contractors who will look at the binder and get the information they need, which has saved them a phone call or two. And it's great. It's very useful. So let me tell you some of the things that are in there that they are referencing. So the documents that go in there are all the drawings, including the demo, the new floor plans, electrical, engineering, and elevations. So basically, it's the whole plan set. If we pulled a permit for this project, then that is the permit set. It'll have a date on it so they know it's the most recent one because it might have been updated from the original set that we gave them to bid off of. But the permit set is usually the most recent, the most accurate, and also it has any updates that we were required to make during the permitting process. So we will print out an 11 by 17 copy of those plans, fold them in half, and kind of have another fold so you can see what page it is as you're flipping through. So then you can pull that out and reference it. Of course, the contractors usually have a full-size set on site, but as I'm taking the binder and walking through, then I can kind of hold this with me and reference it as we go through and be like, oh yeah, this is where that light fixture was, etc. So then after that, after all the drawings, we will have a copy of the finished spec sheet. So it has what we gave the contractor to order, all of the materials and where they're located. It also has details like edge pieces, or if we had Schluter, what color it was, and how high the backsplash is. All that information goes into our finished specs sheet. So that is going to be there on site. So if we're looking at a tile, we'll be like, oh yeah, this tile, I look up on the finished sheet, it's going in this bathroom. This is the reason why we only had, like the other day, I was looking at the project binder. I'm like, why did we only have a 4-inch backsplash when we usually do 6? Well, it's because this particular tile that we were laying vertically was 4 inches tall. And so it'd look odd to have it 6. And so we just left it at 4. So, but things like that, I can look in the binder and be like, oh yes, this is why. So then after the finishes, we'll include plumbing and appliance specs. So oftentimes they need to know specific details about the plumbing or appliances. So we'll print out all the spec sheets that correspond with the plumbing and appliances that we purchased for the project, and also the light fixture specs. So oftentimes they need to know where to place the junction boxes before we even take the lights out to the job site. So having that information there is really useful for the electrician. The plumber needs to know the dimensions for the drains and things like that. So as they're doing all the rough-ins, these documents will get referenced often. Then we will also have the design boards, which is useful for me to help me remember the original design intent and be like, well, what does this look like again? Which room do we have it in? And it's like, how high did we have the lights on the vanity wall? So having those design boards are helpful for seeing the big picture of the design. And, after you've zoomed in on a specific dimension on a light fixture, you can zoom out and look at the design again and make sure it goes together. And then of course we'll have the furniture layout as a separate drawing in here as well. That wasn't included in this permitted drawing set because they don't need to see that, but we also include it here so that we can reference like where we want our outlets to be based on the furniture or the TV locations and things like that. So that's going to be in there as well. And then we will also have reference to things like hardware, cabinetry hardware, cabinet drawings. Once the cabinet maker supplies their drawings to us, we'll often print those out and put them into the binder as well. And then if any revisions happen along the way, we'll just print it out, bring it the next time we go to the job site and put it in the binder. So it really is like the job site Bible. And we haven't yet done this, but I know several people who do, and I think it's very useful to have QR codes for everything as well as having it physically there. I would like to have both, even if we do switch over to having QR codes for a lot of it. Because what if you don't get reception? What if your phone is dying? Having that physical copy there really is going to help you a lot of times. Sometimes these job sites are in kind of remote locations and you don't get good cell coverage. So you can't access your Dropbox or whatever it is that the QR code is going to. So the organization at the front of this, the table of contents will have listed out all the different sections and what's included under that. So whether there's drawings or how many spec sheets there are. At the back of the binder, there's a change log so that I can write down while I'm on site anything that we change or kind of just take notes and record it there for reference. Like, oh, we discussed that we're actually going to change the direction of this tile on this date, and then have it there. But then oftentimes once I go back to the office, I will make a note of it. We will follow up with an email to the contractor, client, whoever needs to know about whatever change happened. But at least it's written down on site. If we're referencing a drawing and we're like, oh, that's not how we did it. Well, that's because we changed it and here's the record of it. Because things are always changing on a project. That's why we're adding new pages and old things should be taken out. So it's like a living document as the changes happen. So the binder gets updated. Other things to consider as you're making this project binder is one thing we decided was really important was to have the proposals of all of the furniture items, plumbing and appliance, and hardware, etc. Everything that we are having the client pay us for, we put into a proposal at the presentation. Well, we wanted to print these proposals out and have them in the binder, but we didn't think as anybody's business what the pricing was on these proposals. nosy neighbor might be stopping by and start flipping through the binder. They don't need to know how much your client is paying for their sofa or anything like that. And the subcontractors don't need to know either. So we came up with a way to print those out without showing the pricing. So then it's there for reference. We have a list of everything that we're supplying to the client, and it still maintains a level of privacy for the client as well. The other thing that we find is really useful is making sure that the sizing and SKU numbers of the items and locations are on the spec sheets for the light fixtures and the plumbing and appliance items. So your contractor might need sizing information for all those items, and providing the SKU number helps them to maybe look up other details that we haven't provided. They can search it up on the vendor's website. For example, they had a Wolf range and they need to know the location to put the gas line. We might not have included that sheet, and so they could go and look up the SKU online and find out where that should be. Having what room the item is going in just reinforces that information. If the contractor has a bunch of lighting boxes and is trying to figure out which one of the 4 bathrooms a sconce goes into, then he can also reference the proposal that we put in there that has all of that information for the light and also what room it goes into. Normally we have labeled all of the boxes, but if for whatever reason one gets missed, or he just discards the box and then doesn't realize that's where it told him where it went, then he can look it up in the binder. And when you bring the project binder to a site, you need to show the contractor what it is and what's in it, and tell them, just so that they know to reference it, especially if it's a contractor you haven't worked with before. And then you can both decide the place where that binder is going to live on the site so that he can reference it or you can reference it. Every time you go to the job, it should be there unless they have it out and they're referencing it at that time. Also, in the site binder, it should mention documentation for who's responsible for supplying different items to the site. For example, if you expect your contractor to do the purchasing of the finished materials, that should be noted on the spec sheet. And if you're purchasing all of the decorative light fixtures, that should be noted. And then maybe it's noted that the contractor is supplying the can lights or, different things like that. Just so we know that nobody's waiting for something they thought the other person was purchasing. It's all clear, been made clear before in the bid that this is another place to double check that. So as you can see, the site binder is really going to be a very important tool for you to have to help keep your job running smoothly. And then a version of this, like I said, will be given to the client at the end. So the client project binder that we give them at the end has a lot of similar information, but it looks a lot prettier, and it has all the warranties and everything else that they need to know for maintaining their home and their furnishings that we supplied. That might be another podcast for another day. Now you know a lot more about running your project better with a site binder. So I've been very glad since we started instituting the site binder in my company. I had variations of it through the years, but it hasn't really been robust as it is now. And I really appreciate it every time I do a site visit. The current version that I have has really been useful, all that information in there. And it's interesting too. Every project I run has a different contractor usually. I have like 5 different contractors that I match up with my clients. And so it's interesting to see how the different contractors will use the site binder, reference it, not reference it. And the questions that they ask me, I'll be like, it's in the site binder. Like, I'll see you on Friday, but you can check it there. So just keep that in mind. Like, you might want to talk with your contractors as you're interviewing them for working with them to see if they're going to be on your A team. Kind of tell them about this site binder and see how open they are to having that. If they maybe even have suggestions for adding to it, that would be great. Okay, so that's it I have for this week. Next week, I'll have another great episode. And until then, stay creative. Thanks for listening. If you love this episode, please leave a rating and a review. This helps me reach other curious creatives like you. If you have a topic request or would like to contact me, simply head over to my website, rwarddesign.com, or email me at podcast@rwarddesign.com.